Now, I think we all know that Serral is very good at StarCraft 2. He's the current world champion. He's considered by many to be the greatest SC2 player of all time. And I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone that I am personally a massive Serral fan. Now, one thing I've always wanted to do, but I've never done before on the channel, is cast a game from the pro gamer's perspective. So what I want to do in this particular match is cast this game of SC2 entirely from Serral's point of view. So what you're looking at right now is what Serral was looking at while he was playing this game. It's a Zerg versus Terran that he played against GuMiho during the TSL 9. We're on the map Inside and Out, and obviously this is a very significant tournament, so it does mean that this is an important match. Now, the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to do this is because I don't know if it's a great idea. These top-level StarCraft players are not shying away from playing at like 400, 500, sometimes even 600 actions on average per minute, meaning that they're pressing north of like 10 buttons a second on average, which is crazy. And I can imagine that if you're not used to looking at this point of view, and I really am not either, it might be a little bit nauseating and it might be a little bit confusing. But bear with me, I'm going to try my very best to explain this game to you. I, of course, haven't seen it yet myself either, but hopefully I'm going to be able to provide a little bit of insight into what these guys are likely thinking of while they're playing this match of StarCraft. All right. Now, please give me a little bit of feedback, by the way, in the comment section down below this video. I would definitely like to do this more frequently if it turns out to be a good idea. Maybe we can do some Terrans and some Protoss as well. I think that'd be a lot of fun, but I can imagine that for some people, this might be a little bit too much. Either way, we've got a Zerg versus Terran against Gumi. Now, GuMiho is a very tricky Terran player. I don't know if Serral wins this game, but I do think that Serral is favored probably like 5-1 or so against someone like Gumi. Despite the fact that GuMiho is very good, Serral is even gooder, right? He's even more good. He's even better than GuMiho. He's very good at that scouting, and I think against someone like GuMiho, it's super important. So what you're noticing already on the screen is Serral making all kinds of little moves with his overlords. That little rally on the drone that built the hatchery on the low ground as well it's all just designed to scout any sort of incoming proxies from GuMiho. So GuMiho is one of those guys who's not afraid to build literally every single one of his structures on the other side of the map. I don't think that's going to be happening in this game, judging by the production tab, but yeah, there's no denying that that chance is always there, right? So just to clarify, Serral doesn't have a production tab while he's playing the game. He doesn't see his opponent's minerals and gas. He doesn't have the supply count available. Well, he sees his own supply and he sees how many minerals and gas he has, but he doesn't know much of his opponent. But yeah, rather than disabling the production tab entirely, I think it's probably still going to be quite helpful to get a little bit of information. Now, Serral's looking all over the map right now. This is the first time he confirms exactly what's happening on the side of the Terran. So normally you expect the Reaper to come in while the Queens are building, right? And since that wasn't the case in this game, Serral sent all of those units all over the map, those Zerglings of his, and he decides to now plant down a Roach Warren too. I think that's a reactionary move upon seeing that his opponent doesn't have a Reaper. Normally with a Reaper scout, it's relatively easy, okay, for the Terran player to figure out what the Zerg is going for. That's going to be nearly impossible in this game, but GuMiho did send out that group of Marines together with a lifted barracks, so sacrificing a little bit of production time to kill that Overlord on the other side of the map. Okay, so right from the get-go, we've got a lot of action. Generally speaking, Zerg players try to have as many drones as possible while making as few units as possible. That's usually what we see in the Terran versus Zerg meta. However, in this game, it's going to be Serral in the driver's seat. He's going to pump out as many roaches as he can afford right now. A couple of Hellions have shown up, so that's not a little bit of scouting here that Serral has. He now knows that it's likely not going to be a 16 Marine drop, so that's something he can cross off the list. But he still does not know exactly what he's going up against. Losing that Overlord scout on the other side of the map can actually be quite annoying. Normally you use that Overlord as well for high ground vision here when those roaches go towards the other side of the map, so you can actually target fire down the supply depot and all that. We do have a little notifier right there on the minimap that something got picked up there by GuMiho, but again, that is not actually something that Serral sees while playing this game. He is completely in the dark as far as, I think, this medevac drop goes. Now, he does have Overlords in the right position. If you look at the minimap, you can see that red dot flying past the OVs. So Serral now knows what he's going up against, but he does not return with the roaches, it seems. He's going to commit towards the other side of the map. I'm assuming... Okay, it's the Marines inside of that thing, yes. So also an Armory is spotted right now because he sees the Hellion morph into a Hellbat. Serral was preparing for a Banshee here, which is on the production tab. He didn't scout it, but the timing at this point in the game, you would expect it to show up pretty soon. So he's being... Ooh, he's being a little bit safer there, making a Spore Crawler blindly. Now, this, okay, is a big deal. So remember that Overlord that got sniped on the other side of the map? These Hellions just showed up at Serral's third base because that OV got killed. So we're just, okay, this is actually a crazy match. We're gonna see both players lose a tremendous amount of workers. Serral trying to apparently, okay, finish off that siege tank too. Banshee just popped out of the starport. Serral just lost 23 workers, and he might lose a couple more. He did kill a lot, but I don't think he's in a very good spot right now. Yep, so the Trickster Terran strikes again. Losing, transfusion on a drone. Losing a little bit of production time on that barracks by lifting it off and moving it towards that Overlord's position. But it does provide a little bit of a gap in Serral's defense, and GuMiho deals a lot of damage. Okay, so... Oh, this is nice. A problem you run into in a game of StarCraft 2 that I think you only learn by playing this game a ton is assessing your current situation in the game. So if you were Serral right now, I'm going to pause for just a moment. If you were Serral right now, do you consider where you're currently at an advantage? So obviously he was looking at his own bases, he was looking at his roaches, but he had to divide his attention. He probably assumes he kills about maybe a dozen workers on the other side of the map. How many workers did he lose on his side of the map? It's hard to see, right? It's really hard to say. I would probably imagine that Serral at this point is behind if I were in his shoes. Now, obviously, I have more information, so maybe my stance on that is, not the perfect one, right? Because I'm already getting some additional info that Serral does not have. But I don't think that Serral is going to be particularly happy about this game right now. So you have to make a choice. 9 times out of 10, Terran players, in the current meta of StarCraft 2, go for a quick third command center. The Roaches did not see a quick third command center on the other side of the map. But judging by the droning here, I think Serral is making the assumption that this is not going to be a 2-base all-in. So, StarCraft in a lot of ways is a bit of a game of chance as well, right? So... Maybe chance is not necessarily the correct word. It's a game of odds. So it's reminding me a little bit of, for example, poker at this point, right? So Serral at this point, he's thinking, okay, I haven't seen my opponent's third command center, but I know that there's a good chance that there's a third command center out there. I'm gonna play as if there is a third CC, because as if I play as if this were... Okay, so now he gets confirmation. If I play as if this were a 2-base all-in, I'm gonna have to make a lot of units right now. And if it isn't a 2-base all-in, I find myself incredibly far behind. So Serral just now took a chance, he cut a corner, and he decided to drone up very aggressively after losing that many workers. To this point, we're talking 58 drones versus 46, but that definitely was a little bit of a risk. If GuMiho would have planted down additional barracks on his side of the map instead and just hit his opponent in the face with a ton of roach or a ton of marines, I don't think there would be a whole lot of roaches available at that point in the game to defend. Serral also did not actually get his Zergling speed, right? So that's a little bit awkward for him too. He doesn't really know exactly what he's going up against right now. So he's going to stick around on Roaches and Ravagers. I think that's, once again, a stylistic choice against GuMiho. So GuMiho is someone who plays a lot of Terran mech. And despite the fact that you see a couple Marines, I think on the other side of the map we saw, double Tech Lab. So Serral doesn't know if this is going to be a bio transition right now or if it's going to be a mech transition. And Roach Ravager is pretty good against both. So it's like the middle of the road kind of approach. So right now he gets confirmation. But making a transition towards Lings and Banes at this point, probably not ideal. Alright, so this is a good bit of scouting right here for Serral. So what you really want to know is how many drones can I make before I have to make army. Right, so since Zerg can obviously make a dozen workers all at once, sometimes even more. You want to make as many workers as you can before making an army, because if the workers are mining for longer, you can obviously make more army, right? Because you'll have more resources. However, if you drone a little bit too hard, you don't have an army, and then you just straight up lose if the opponent decides to push across. One little changeling over there scouts the movement right there from GuMiho. Okay, I think Serral right now is putting his opponent on a +1/+1 timing attack, and that's exactly what's happening here. Although GuMiho doesn't need to commit too much. Creep spread, by the way, here. Something that's difficult to quantify in your own game, but there it is. Forcing the Terran player to siege up at the edge of creep is going to buy Serral a lot of time to get an additional production cycle in. I think he even sniped one of the siege tanks just now. So the question is the Terran still going to go across? I think the answer is no, although Serral is still making a lot of units. 2-2 has just started up here for Gumi. He's checking right now, face checking with the roaches. Okay, splitting one of the roaches off as well. Going after the Raven. Raven gets biled down. Okay, I think that's the end of that push. And Serral at this point probably feels like he can indeed transition towards a higher tech army. So one of the problems you run into with Roach Ravager is that it's very good in the early game. It's very good in the mid game, but it falls off in the late game as Terran players max out. So maxed out Marine Marauder Medevac, super good against Roach Ravager. So you want to make that transition. So Hydras are coming up, and we have a Lurker Den on the production tab too. So Serral is going to be moving on over into that higher tier army here very shortly. But that's why he's not really being too aggressive with the forces that he's got right now. He's just trying to play that macro game. He's just trying to, yeah, squeeze out as many drones as possible. So now we need to see a little bit of splitting. Notice the control groups here at the bottom of the screen. So hotkey 1 seems to be his Roach Ravager Zergling army, and then there's some Hydras on a separate control group as well. I think, yeah, those are indeed in the back to try and make a couple of Lurkers happen as well. Notice, though, that Serral has also split up his army. So despite the fact that he's got all of his units on control group 1, okay, only just now, I believe, he made another control group for control group 4. Anyways, he still is boxing his units around to make sure that he can deal with all of those drops. Queen's also on a hotkey. But I think it's only the queens right now at the front, and I'm assuming the rest of the queens are probably controlled using the camera hotkeys instead. We've seen a lot of camera hotkey spam too. The advantage of camera hotkeys over regular hotkeys is that, well, you can create a hotkey for things that you can't actually see yet, so you can make hotkeys through the fog of war, which is awesome. And it's only a single click rather than a double click to switch to that position, which is really nice. It's 50% less. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but every little action counts at this level of play. All right, so Lurkers here are timed very well. 2-2 is just about to finish up. This isn't something Serral really knows, but it's something, again, that he knows from playing a lot of games. He hasn't seen the exact timing of 2-2, if I'm not mistaken, but he does have himself those Lurkers available right now. Beautiful abductions, too. Vipers on a separate control group, getting those units in range of the Lurkers. And yeah, it seems like he's controlling this army right now with 3 different hotkeys. So one for the Roach Ravager Ling, one for the Hydras and the Lurkers, and then one for the Vipers as well. Spore Crawlers are being set up in rings around the main base to prevent any drops from coming into that area. Zerg units moving on over towards this side of the map too. Creep spread continuously moving forward. If you look at the actions per minute right now in the top left-hand corner, you can see that, yeah, we're speeding up. We're speeding up. So this is gonna get a little bit more crazy as we move forward. So this is where the game gets incredibly hard, right? I mean, the game is already very hard, but now ideally you want to stay on top of the queen injects, you want to stay on top of the harassment, you want to continuously do all of the creep spreading that you've been doing already as well, but you got to start prioritizing. Turns out pro gamers, even with 600 actions, can't do everything. So you can see right now the first thing that Serral is letting go of is that creep spread. Apparently he's satisfied with the creep spread that he's got. In an ideal world, you keep moving that forward, but it's losing priority right now. Whereas in the earlier stages of the game, that priority list is super high for that particular move. At this stage, apparently we're fighting instead. He's trading out Roaches and Ravagers. Ooh, trying to get the Lurkers in a good position. I think he probably wants to trade out Roaches and Ravagers because he's been maxed out for some time for either like more Hydras, more Lurkers, or more Zerglings, and then eventually Banelings too. 9 times out of 10, you don't really need to scout for this. Terrans are going to transition towards Ghosts in the current meta. So Serral's setting up with a Baneling transition right now. Banelings are very good when it comes to dealing with Ghosts, but obviously, yeah, he doesn't really know. Okay, so now he sees them. So seeing those snipes gives him the confirmation. So you can really tell here that the Roaches and the Ravagers were more or less like a stepping stone for him to make that transition eventually, oh my god, towards the Lings and the Banes and the Hydras and the Lurkers. So the Roaches and Ravagers were nice, but they were only really there to make sure that the Zerg here did not die. Okay, so I would say the game is pretty even at this point. Maybe a slight advantage for Serral. That was really nice. Yeah, those engagements have all been really clean. Sniping units left, right, and center. Nah, I actually do think that this is a pretty significant advantage for Serral. If I were to play this game, though, I would probably make the assumption it's pretty even. Judging those engagements can be quite tricky. One thing I don't really like here for Serral is the fact that he doesn't have vision of the top left-hand corner and the base at the 3 o'clock. So you really do want to try and, yeah, be aware of the fact that Terran's expanding once again. So he's probably making that assessment here, judging off of timing alone. But he is making a move right now towards the top left, yeah. So you really do want to figure out roughly what the Terran player is going for and when they are expanding. Looks to me, though, that GuMiho is playing mostly 4-base Turtle here before he adds on additional CCs. Okay, movement towards the high ground. Serral does have the full Lurker upgrades here, so Parasitic Bomb goes down on the Medivacs too. Lings and Banes are rolling forward. Okay, Siege Tank gets abducted as well. You can really tell why the APM is helpful, right? Look at that actions per minute, 800s. There were 800s right there on the... okay. Anyways, Nidus Network got planted down. Next step in the plan here for Serral is Pathogen Glands. So that's the energy upgrade for the Infestor. Don't know if he plans on adding on any Infestors already, but even though the Ling Bane Roach army needs to be on a separate control group, so need the Lurkers and then also the Vipers. If we're gonna mix in Infestors, those will also need to be on a separate control group. It might be that Serral is not planning on adding those on until later, but it's been, yeah, quite common. Okay, I like that move right there from Gumi, actually. He's ready for that Nidus Worm. Yeah, I do think it's a good idea to go for the Infestor, but it definitely, once again, needs to be on a control group of its own as well, because otherwise things get incredibly difficult. Continuous harassment here. So Serral is, rather than putting spotter units out in the top left-hand corner and the 3 o'clock expansion, he is just taking those bases of his own. I guess at this point he's saying, okay, if you want to take a 5th, that's fine by me. But I'm going to take your other base, and it's going to be difficult for you to expand moving forward from there. Banelings roll into the planetary. That's opening up supply. Okay, for it to be replaced with more Zerglings, and eventually more Banelings as well. I was going to say, maybe we're going to make that Infestor transition here in just a moment. Banelings even get burrowed in the middle of that engagement too. Yeah, this is Serral's comfort zone. 4th Command Center just got blown up. Obviously, there were additional CCs already done. So I'm assuming that one of those command centers have flown on over to... yeah, retake that location once again. We've got a hotkey as well for the Nidus Network, so that's hotkey 7. He's also got a hotkey for the Evolution Chambers at the bottom, so constantly checking for that as well. Spire coming up, probably for a Brute Lord transition here in a little bit if he needs to. So I think this is mostly rinse and repeat right now for Serral. If he can continuously harass his opponent in the way that he is... resources-wise, he's maybe not making the most efficient trades, but he knows very well that Terran's starting to run out of juice at this point. 3rd base is running out. 4th base is going to start running relatively low as well. And since Serral still has a lot of mining, these inefficient trades should still work out quite well for him. Okay, Infestors are indeed coming up right now. I don't know what control group he puts those on. So he just made 8 of them. He might be putting it on control group 1. So Control Group 1 is his main army. He might be putting it on the same ones and then maybe unhotkeying a couple of them. If he wants to go for like that Neural Parasite on the Ghosts to that EMP the rest of the Ghosts. Anyways, I think that Zerg at this point is in a good spot, but it's not like Terran here is in a particularly bad situation either, right? If you look at the resources lost right now in the top left, again, that's not something Serral can see, but he's lost roughly 8,000 resources more in this game so far, and that's basically a full base worth, right, at this point. So... It's a good game for Serral, but he needs to be careful that he does not get carried away. Because this Terran army, it packs a punch. He's now making that transition towards Ghost Mech. Liberators are here. We have very good upgrades. Blue Flame is done here as well for those Hellions and Hellbats. So it might be time to make the transition away. Okay. Armies are being split up. Infestors are moving around the map as well. My god. It's all so fast. It doesn't slow down either, right? It's very much so a flow state. Where these guys are maybe starting off a little bit slower. But eventually flow is achieved. And yeah, even though it's difficult to judge your assessment of the game while you're playing it, you can learn to do so by playing a lot of games over the years. Okay, he tried to go for the fungal growth right there on all of the Ghosts. If that would have happened, the Banelings would have connected, and I think that would have been the end for that Terran army. In this particular case, though, it was a good snipe right there by Gumi, just barely in the nick of time. Still, a lot of damage is being done. That 12 o'clock base has been in a lot of trouble. Terran just hasn't had the headroom here to go for for a 5th base. I was going to say 4th, but that's not accurate. He did go for a 4th base multiple times, but he hasn't been able to secure a 5th. Greater Spire, just about to finish up. Nidus Worms being set up all over the map, so Serral can easily transfer his army as well if he needs to. Maybe get the drones back to safety, maybe move them on over to one of the outer bases a little bit quicker. Obviously, that's another thing to manage. You need to remember where those structures are. So Serral does not have a separate hotkey for every single one of those Nidus entrances. He does have lurkers, though. And he does have a couple of those infestors burrowed in the middle of that Terran army. Are we gonna go? Ooh, that scan just barely not making it. There we go. That's beautiful. Did you see that? Okay, so he neural parasited one of the opponent's ghosts, then selected the ghost that he had neuraled and used EMP on the rest of the ghosts. This makes it so that if GuMiho was thinking about an attack, he can't. He needs to wait. He needs to wait until he's got energy once again. So this is buying Serral about at least 30 to 60 seconds worth. And every minute that goes by right now, GuMiho is going more and more broke. Are we going to see the same move again? Because he does have an infestor in the middle of that army once more. He's moving forward. There we... Oh, God. Okay, he decided to go for a fungal growth instead. It looks like the ghosts, though. Okay, they do stay alive just barely. Serral decides to back off, but he's got a ridiculous amount of money in the bank to continuously reinforce his army. He can go to Brute Lords. He can go into more Lurkers. He can make any type of army, and GuMiho is in a world of trouble. The entire base, or the entire map, I guess, has been taken by Serral. There's another fungal, making it difficult for that Terran player to get close. GuMiho does not have enough scans. He ended up losing that Raven for free in the earliest stages of the game. But these armies that he does have, they are incredibly cost efficient. Resource lost-wise, you can see it's going heavier and heavier in favor of the Terran. But I wonder if Terran has not already lost a little bit too much. Supply advantage right now, though, for Mr. GuMiho. That's mostly because Serral hasn't actually decided to remax yet. He may not have enough larva. Yeah, he does not have enough larva. So even though he maybe got a little bit carried away with the harassment there, he forgot queen injects. As a matter of fact, yeah, he's only got 3 queens, so he hasn't been able to do enough injects. So since he's been constantly reinforcing with Lings and Banes, they're cheap in minerals, but it does also mean they're very expensive in the larva count, right? So that's one of the resources that Serral really needs to get on top of. So he's injecting the bases now all over the map. Doing so very rapidly. Drone gets burrowed. Making it difficult for the Terran to continuously expand there. And you can see that Serral at this point has been running circles around Gumi. He needs to back off right here for just a moment because he didn't inject. He lost all the queens and he did not do a good job injecting there for a moment. So I guess that this has alleviated a little bit of pressure off of Gumi. GuMiho at this point probably also wondering, hey, what's going on, right? Like, why did he not harass me? A little bit of a macro mistake right there by the finisher. But I think he still is in a phenomenal position here. Not sacrificing the Banelings. He's got 5,000 gas, okay? That goes to his children. He needs to save the money for the next generation of StarCraft players. No, he could definitely YOLO into Banes as well, but apparently he doesn't want to be all too cost inefficient. Top left-hand corner right now, acquired by Gumi. But keep in mind, Zerk has already been mining that one for some time, so he really wants to make sure that, oh my god, he's transferring the drones using the Nidus Worm? I guess that's faster. Yeah, it is faster. It reduces the mining time, I guess, that you lose, but... Oh, here we go again. Infestor does not get out of there. But yeah, we have a Greater Spire. We've got a potential to switch towards that army here very easily as well. I think that Serral is probably going to try and collapse on top of that top left-hand corner. So a base, when it's fully mined, so if you have 16 workers on an expansion, it mines for about 10 minutes, and then the minerals run out, right? So Serral probably thinking, okay, I have mined that base in the top left for like, what, 4 minutes maybe? It's hard to say, but there's only really a few more minutes of resources available in that expansion, meaning that I only really need to trade like 1, maybe 2 more times until this game is mined. Now, moving up towards this high ground, incredibly brave. Honestly, not a very good engagement at all. Yeah, beautiful split right there by Gumi. In the meantime, there's an orbital actually in the top left, so that orbital command does allow the Zerglings to run forward, but good control by Gumi. He stays alive, he loses a lot of units, but right now he really is going broke. So despite the fact that I don't think that an engagement was good for the Zerg, Serral doesn't need to trade very efficiently. He can lose probably like 5 minerals for every 2 minerals here that the Terran player is losing at this point, right? And he knows it very well. He's still fully mining a bunch of expansions of his own. This is now the final push, I believe, here for GuMiho. He needs to essentially win the game right here, right now, but he has not been able to really establish a foothold other than the first 4 bases of his. Zerglings once again split off from the pack to go towards the SCVs in the top left-hand corner. SCVs are in a little bit of trouble. They continue not mining. There's another neural parasite potential too. And honestly, after the early game, GuMiho has really not had a chance in this match. So, in a way, this can be traced back to that one point where Serral took a gamble. So, remember where he did not scout his opponent's third command center, and he played as if there was a third command center out. He didn't scout it until a little while later. Serral just held down the drone button, and obviously he made a lot of amazing moves in between, you know, that point and right now. But, yeah, ever since then, it's like he's grabbed the advantage once more. So, he had to cut a corner. He had to take a bit of a risk. But I think he probably calculated the odds to be in his favor, like, I don't know, probably 10 to 1 or so, because it's very uncommon for Terrans to go for that 2-base all-in, that he just held down the drone button, he took a bit of a chance, he relied on his creep spread and his macro instead. Now the base in the top left is in a lot of trouble. Zerk is going to continuously reinforce this. 25 SCVs end up going down, GG is called, and just like that, it's Serral who obtains the victory. Alright, so what do you think? Should I be considering doing this every once in a while? Hey, thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Don't forget to smile. And I'll see you once again in the next one.